Hey there, I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at Dice Miners by Atlas Games.
And Dice Miner, you are just that, mining for dice. This is going to be a dice selection, dice rolling, action selection kind of game in which you are trying to get the correct selection of dice to score you the most points each round. Let's take a look at it down below. We'll show you the components, how this game works, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on it and let you know what a gamer and a non-gamer thinks of Dice Miner.
All right, I have Dice Miner on the table here. Let me show you guys how this game works. In this game, you are going to be getting dice from this giant bag here, pouring it onto your 3D mountain, which is going to hold all your dice, and you are then going to draft the dice that you want off the top of the mountain, trying to get the best arrangement of points for yourself. In this game, you are first going to select a hero from the 6 available that are going to give you special icons throughout the course of a round that you can use to help you in scoring purposes. And then you will load the mountain up with dice. So let's talk about how that works. You would pour the dice out of this bag here, but I'm going to use my hand and simply drop them into the top here like so. And they are going to fall into the different spots, and you can see the outline here of how it's supposed to look like once it is completely filled up. And we need a couple more here like that. And any that are caught on the sides are going to go back into the bag. And so what you see here facing the players, that is the value of that particular die. It's not exactly what's on top, it is what is facing out to all the players. And one by one, players are going to take off the top of the mountain. So at the beginning of a round, only these 2 dice are available. But once someone takes a die, then that allows the dice underneath it to become available. So for instance, once this die is taken, now I have 3 options, these 3. And one by one, the players will take turns doing this, and unless someone has a beer. And so there are beer on all the dice. You can see that there's a mug of beer there. And when you play a beer, you are going to give this to one of your opponents. And whoever you give it to, they will get to re-roll this die and keep it for whatever comes up on the die after the re-roll. But what you get in return is you get to draw 2 dice, and they don't necessarily have to come off the top. They can come off the sides. And so if I were to share a beer, I could take any one of these 3, but I could also take any one of these 3 or any one of these 3. And again, I get 2 dice in one turn. And so players are going to go back and forth until all the dice are drawn. And let me show you exactly what these dice are going to do for you. So you do have 5 different specific type of dice. You have your tunnel dice, which are the white ones, and you're trying to get those to be in a straight, 1 through 5, because you're going to gain points for every pip on each one of these dice that are in the straight. So for instance, if I've got a straight of 1 through 5, that is worth 15 points. If I only have, let's say, 1 through 3, then that's going to be worth 9 points, obviously. Now, I do have to have a 1 to start the straight off. If I only have 2 through 5, that's worth nothing, because I have to start from the beginning. Same thing if I were to, let's say, have that. I would only get points for 1 and 2, so 3 points. I would not get points for 4 and 5, even though they are technically consecutive. That's how the tunnel dice work. Next are your magic dice, because after a round of drafting, you are then going to go into the magic phase, where you are going to spend any magic dice that have diamonds on them. For every diamond that you see, you are going to be able to re-roll that exact number of other dice. You cannot re-roll your magic dice. You can only re-roll the other dice, and you have to roll that exact number. So if I have 2 diamonds, I have to re-roll 2 dice if I'm going to use my magic dice. You don't have to use them. These are your treasure dice. They're going to have gems on them, and for every gem, you are going to get 1 point, unless you cash them, and we'll come back to what that looks like here in just 1 minute. Your green dice are going to be the dice that you use to neutralize your hazard dice. And so we're going to talk about these together here. You can see that on the green dice, you're going to have pickaxes, you're going to have shields on them, and pickaxes are going to neutralize the fall-ins or the cave-ins. And so you're going to see that there are some stones falling from the sky that represent a cave-in. You're also going to see some dragons on these dice. And so if you have a combo here of a pickaxe with the cave-in, you are going to multiply however many pickaxes you have by however many cave-ins that you have. So this has got 3 cave-ins on it, and that's going to give you that number of points. However, if you don't have the pickaxe, if you only have the cave-ins, then that's going to be -3 points. Same thing with the shields and the dragons. If I can find the shields, there you go. The shields with the dragons are going to do the same combination there for you. And then last but not least, you will have treasure chests on these green dice. And so this is how you're going to cache certain dice. And so by caching, what that means is you're going to select however many you see, how many treasure chests you see, so 3 in this case. You're going to select 3 dice to save and keep as that value for the rest of the game. And so I could keep this gem right here, these 3 gems, and if I do that with the treasure dice, it's going to multiply their value. It's going to double it, actually. And so instead of 3 points, they would be worth 6 points. But I don't have to use it on those. I could use it on my tunnel dice or any dice for that matter. And at the end of the round, players are going to re-roll any dice that they didn't cache, and you'll be stuck with whatever values you have then. You'll reload the mountain, drawing from the giant bag. You'll play 2 more rounds, and then whoever has the most points at the end of the game is going to be the winner. You do get a handy-dandy little notepad here to keep score with your 3 rounds and up to 4 players. On the back side of this, you are going to see that you can play the solo game. And so in the solo game, you are going to have special rules that are going to limit what you can draft in a certain round and when you can do that. And you're going to get points based off of same sort of scoring mechanisms, a little bit different in how they all score. You can check that out in the rulebook, but you are basically trying to get as high of a score as possible based off of the score results here, and that will tell you how you did. And that is how you play Dice Miner. Let's go back up top. Share our thoughts on this one.
And we're back. And right now we're going to share our thoughts on Dice Miner. And we're going to start with the non-gamer here. So Sam, first impressions of this game. You've got lots of dice. You've got the 3D mountain that holds the dice. What were your initial impressions of this game?
I thought the setup looked pretty interesting. We don't have very many games,
that are 3D on a mountain.
Yeah. But it is a lot of dice. So at first glance, it looks a little overwhelming, especially when all the dice have different pictures on them and numbers and all kinds of things. So a little overwhelming, but actually playing the game was a lot of fun. It's a very quick game, which I always enjoy. Really easy to understand. I like it a lot.
So it's a little deceiving when you first look at it. It might seem like it's overwhelming, but you quickly grasp it and understand what it's about then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing for me as one teaching the game to a non-gamer. You do have all these different dice and different symbols on it, like Sam mentioned, but really the rule book does a good job of explaining to you what everything does. It's a quick read. It doesn't take very long to understand exactly what you're trying to do in this game and how to get the most out of the dice that you're trying to get each round. I think perhaps maybe the most complicated aspect of this game is caching those dice that you can keep in between rounds. Outside of that, very easy to understand and learn the idea behind this game.
Yeah. And there's some strategy to it, but not so much that you're,
Right. And that's what I was going to ask you next, Sam.
Yeah.
As far as understanding how to do well in this game, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I lost pretty big, but I think it was just a matter of, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely a strategy to the game and which dice that you pick. So I think if I played a second time, I think I would do a lot better just because you kind of have to have one playthrough, which, it is a pretty quick game. You can play 2 rounds pretty quickly.
Yeah. The box here says that it takes 20 to 30 minutes. I think probably that 30-minute range is when you're playing with the maximum player count, which is 4.
Yeah.
1 to 4 players. There's a solo mode on this. And when you're playing 2 players, I think probably you're looking at the lower end of that 20 minutes. So it is a quick game. It's one that turns are pretty quick. You just take the die off the top of the mountain.
There's not a whole lot of time to think.
Right.
So sometimes it's kind of the luck of how quick can you think and what's available to you.
If you don't want to bog down the game and have analysis paralysis going into it, and you're just kind of trying to keep up with the flow of the game, you're right. This can kind of move almost too quick in some ways.
And then you kind of figure out, what do I do now that I have these?
Yeah. Let's talk about the fun factor with this game. Where do you sit on how fun this game was?
I thought it was a lot of fun. Again, I think because it moves so quickly, you get a winner pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I think that right there is fun. The picking up the dice, when you get to give someone a beer and pick out dice, and that's kind of where you can get at each other a little bit.
I really enjoyed that component to this game, the sharing of the beers, because it's a choice you have to make to try and get yourself something to really help you, but at the same time you're really maybe helping somebody else by doing so, because they get that extra die and they get to re-roll it, and it can be something that can be very helpful to them, and obviously you don't want to help your opponent. So I thought that was a really cool mechanic in this game.
That was probably my favorite part of it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always fun, or at least I think it's always fun, to have a mechanic where you're drafting things, and by drafting something, it opens other possibilities for other players too. It's the same kind of idea in a game like Seven Wonders Duel, if you're familiar with that, where you're drafting the pyramid of cards, or another game that Sam and I did, Fluttering Souls had that same idea, where you draft cards, and by picking cards that are on top of other cards, you open up your opponent to be able to select those other cards that weren't available to you earlier. You have that same idea here with the mountain of dice. You pick off the top, and that opens the next row underneath. I really enjoy that idea with drafting, and so you have that in spades here in this game, and so that's a really positive note for it. I do think one hesitation I have with this game is maybe the replayability factor here with this game. I do worry that it can get kind of samey after you've played it a few times. You do have those additional heroes that you can start the game with. If you've got the Kickstarter copy of the game like I do here, there are additional heroes that you can play with. And so that is one way to increase the replayability factor here. But outside of that, there's not much. And so that would be one caution I would throw about this, that this could maybe be limited on replayability. But
which I think is personally is more of a gamer issue than a non-gamer.
For sure.
As a non-gamer, I like
the same thing.
The expected,
So that's Dice Miner. Let's get into our pros and cons on this game. Sam, you're the non-gamer here. What were the main things about this game that really stood out to you that were enjoyable?
I think it's pretty unique. It's unique. It's fairly fast. It's easy to understand. I think it's a really good game to play with gamers and non-gamers, and it introduces drafting a little bit more. Yeah,
I think so too. I think this is a good entry-level draft game that is, like you said, different from other kinds of draft games out there. You've got dice with a 3D mountain that has pretty cool table presence to it. So, any cons?
Maybe the replayability, again, that's more of a gamer issue than a non-gamer issue for us personally, at least. It could be a little overwhelming to begin with, but other than that, I don't have a whole lot of cons for this game.
Overwhelming on the different...
Just how much there is at the beginning, the decisions you can make, the strategy. It could be a little overwhelming, but I think that clears up pretty quickly after a round or two.
One thing that I might throw out there as far as a con is that if you get behind early in this game, it can maybe be a bit of a struggle to catch back up.
I think that was my issue at the beginning too,
We found that to be true in some of the games that we played, that you want to try to have evenly matched from the beginning. Otherwise, it can kind of get a runaway leader in this game. And so And I think partly because of that, the reason why that is because you keep the dice that you've picked from early on in the game, and you can build off of that going forward.
Yeah.
So if you select poorly in the beginning of the game, that can really kind of hamper how well you're going to do later on. You do get to re-roll those dice, so it's not you're not completely shot when you choose poorly at the beginning, but that is something to think about. So. Scale of 1 to 10, love to hate. What do you give Dice Miner, Sam?
I think I'd give it probably like a 7.2.
7.2, okay. I'm a little bit lower than where you're coming in on it. I'm probably going to give it about a 6.8 for me. It's one that I enjoy and one that I will play whenever somebody asks. 6.8, 7.2, right in that ballpark. So that's Dice Miner from Atlas Games. Check it out.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.